just tell them my personal experiences. Hopefully it will inspire them to pursue a more international journey as well.
Yes, surely.
Especially the written work which Gordon has provided to all of us on LinkedIn. It was helpful for practitioners like me also, because I was seeing the trainee contract or whatever applications he gave for the trainee contracts, whatever covering letters he made. He has made it all public, which is very, commendable, because I'm not seeing a lot of people being comfortable sharing all of this, because they like to keep it to themselves. So, that's something commendable. I was very happy to see that.
Exactly. And it happens actually very less occasions that people who do well at this stage, they are not able to share all those experiences at the same time when they are doing all these things. It is an amazing experience which is going to happen today, that a person who has traveled this path has been documenting all his path at the same time when he was in that path. So normally people write and get to be known once they travel that, and after almost a decade when they cross that path. And by that time, it actually changes a lot. So when you have traveled a particular path and just immediately, so it is a better guidance, it is a better know-how, it is a better insight, it is a better footmark which you are putting for the young lawyers to follow in who are going to pass out this year and in a year or two, which is going to be very proximate to what they are going to experience in the time to come in 2-3 years. That's how this session is very important for all the students, because they are going to experience the same thing which Gordon has faced in last 3-4 years. Legal industry or legal profession or legal academic does not change so fast. in 3-4 years, except the COVID situation, there is no much change even at the global level. But over a decade, when people like, for example, I have done my LLM in 2003. So in 18 years, many things have changed. Even the rules of admission to LLM, even the rules of admission to law school have changed a lot. So my experience would not be that useful for the students, but your experience, which has just been crossed, which has just been traveled that path, is going to be becoming a live or almost a live experience of what they are going to face, and they could be in a better position to plan themselves, which is maybe a domestically international career, maybe internationally domestic career, maybe international completely. So in all respect, they can plan themselves better and better.
Yes, definitely. Because I also think when I was a student, I feel like there wasn't too many people, I could kind of learn from. Because, for example, you also mentioned how usually they may be already experienced lawyers who usually give advice or guidelines, but usually those people are in a position they're either so busy they're not able to provide that much advice, or either they are just already too far away from the journey that the law student have been taking on, because it has been years for them ever since they graduate from law school. So I just feel like it's good for maybe other future lawyers or lawyers who are younger in their career journey to share their experiences. I think that's what the community needs as well. That's why I feel like what I'm doing could be helpful for some of them.
Exactly. I'm also equally overwhelmed by the way of your openness, by the way of your receptivity, and by the way of your always being ready to for the young generation or newcomers. This is also one very important attitude, which is very important in profession. That people who have done well, who have achieved well, sharing their experience is something which is completely personal. It is not something which is compelling. It is something which is completely personal. It comes from the inside of your mind. And your sharing of all your thoughts, all your experience, all your work is an amazing feature that you have, which I must have to say that makes you apart from all the people who must have traveled, who must have been of your age and been achieving similar achievements, but they are not able to share. And you are able to share and guide and provide insight to the young generation. This is something which is wonderful. Do we start, Tariq sir?
Yes, sir, I think we can. Gordon, if you're good to go, we can probably start.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to listen to Gordon today. That is why I will not speak much, but it is important for me to introduce to all of you the topic that we have taken today. Although there have been many topics which we were thinking when we were requesting Mr. Gordon to take a session with our students. But we finalized and we zero down to the topic which is going to be important for all the students in our law school, and which is something which is that need of the time, that our students should stop, should not only think in the national boundaries with respect to their career, with respect to the profession, with respect to the practice. All the students should start thinking of globally. There is a great legal market that is waiting for you. So we have today with us Mr. Gordon Chung. He's going to take a session on how to internationalize your legal career. And this is important because nobody else will do nobody else will do for you. Teacher will come and teach in the class. Examiners will come and examine you. Practitioners will give you internship opportunities and you will work with them. But nobody will turn you to the top lawyer. Nobody will turn you to understand how you have to globalize yourself, how you have to make the best use of your time, how you have to apply to global opportunities and internationalize your career. So it is you who have to take it forward, and it is only possible when you have the right guidance. And today we have assembled over here to provide you the best guidance which is possible in the industry at the moment. And we have today with us Mr. Gordon Chung. I will request my team member today, Miss Mansi Rana, to kindly introduce our guests to the participants. Miss Mansi.
Thank you, sir. Good morning and good afternoon to one and all present here. My name is Mansi Rana. It gives me an immense pleasure to introduce Mr. Gordon Chung. Mr. Gordon Chung is a future trainee solicitor at Baker McKenzie. He completed his Bachelor of Laws degree at City University of Hong Kong. He then obtained his postgraduate Master of Corporate Law degree at University of Cambridge. Mr. Gordon also passed the July 2019 New York State Bar examination, and he is awaiting admission as a New York attorney at law. As an avid poster on LinkedIn and other social media platforms, Mr. Gordon founded Global Lawyers Connect, a platform for aspiring lawyers which has more than 20,000 followers across the world. We are greatly honored and privileged to have you amongst us, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mansi, for a short introduction of our guest today. I would now hand over the session to our advocate and our faculty member and our well-wisher to our law school, 𝐷 Khan sir. Now 𝐷 Khan sir will take over the session and take it forward. 𝐷 sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Director, sir, for this excellent opportunity. And thank you, Gordon, for agreeing to be a part of this discussion today. I was very excited for this one because generally I'm the one who's speaking and delivering in India, having done almost more than 100 webinars during the pandemic. I'm very excited to hear your views today because this is the field where I don't think any one of us will be able to do justice to the topic. Since you are somebody who's there and who knows more than all of us, none of us has traveled that far. We haven't been able to, be in that position where you are. So, Gordon, with this, I'd like to keep it an interactive session. I'd like to ask you a couple of questions from the students. Though we have kept it restricted only to our students, otherwise I'm sure the number would have increased. drastically because a lot of students would have been interested, but this is only for Lloyd students. And I must tell you that Lloyd Law College is a prominent law school in India, doing extremely well. And we focus essentially on the practical aspects of the law rather than the rote method. Anyway, having said that, Gordon, I would like to first hear from you about your early law school days. I'm sure you were raised in Hong Kong, and you must have done your law school from there. If you could tell us briefly whether you were focused from the law school itself, you knew about all of these things, or this all came as a surprise and things were uncertain, because a lot of students feel that, there's a lot of uncertainty. They're not sure about their career plans. So what would you like to speak on that, please?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you again for having me today. It's my pleasure to present in front of a lot of students from a prominent university in India as well. And yeah, regarding my early law school journey, I believe that many students listening now, they are kind of in the same position, because as a law student, you actually can't really figure out what you want to do at first, because especially in Hong Kong, I would say there are many different career paths, even for lawyer, like barrister, solicitor is also a different path. Some people may want to be a professor. For me, when I was in my first year of law school, I didn't know what's coming, upon me, because the thing is, I try to look for different kinds of work opportunities. But my first year of law school, I didn't do very well, to be honest. It was a very difficult situation for me, because I didn't know how to do well in those law school exams. It's just a bit different from what I experienced before. And also the classmates, they were a bit more competitive. I think this is also kind of like an Asian thing. Back in India, people are also competitive. But I think the problem is that I didn't know what I want, and I couldn't secure a really good internship at some commercial or big global law firms back in Hong Kong. So I just start a bit slow. I try some smaller law firms, high street firms, so that to see whether maybe, it's not always the true that you need to work for big law firms. Some people would enjoy working for smaller firms as well. It's just a matter of preference. So I would give it a try. But then I realized I didn't also like it that much, because I feel like I enjoy working with a client which is more international, rather than domestic criminal clients, private client, which is a little bit more narrow. So it's also always this process of figuring out what I want to do. But however, I always couldn't really know what I wanted to do. But I can always very sure what I don't want to do early in my career, which I think is the most important thing as a law student. I didn't want to work for smaller high street law firms, because I didn't like the client's base. And then I tried to work as a barrister. So I shadowed some barrister back in Hong Kong. I didn't like it as well, because I felt like they work so independently. There's a lack of a team working element, which I can experience in a big law firm. So I also kind of crossed that out, because I felt like it wasn't my path. And I also tried to be an academic as well. I tried to work as a research assistant. Maybe one day I want to be a professor as well. But at least not the moment right after I graduate. I realized that I still want to experience that commercial atmosphere, like working in a big organization. So I think it was always this method of crossing out what I didn't want to do at the moment, so that all those paths lead me to where I am today, which at least, honestly, right now, I'm not 100% sure whether I would commit my entire life to this particular job. But the thing is, there's a possibility I would like this way more than all other career paths I came across. So I think that's the more important, the process of figuring it out. That was probably the thing I have been doing in the past years.
Thank you, Gordon. That was very useful. Moving on, because, a lot of students are not sure whether they want to work right after their 5 years are over. Some of them perhaps want to go for their masters, and then it's another ball game. They don't know which college to apply for, whether they should go for the name, because, there may be a case, for instance, in arbitration. We know that MIDS may be an excellent choice, but there are people who run after Oxford, Cambridge, and, top Ivy League colleges. So how one should figure out which college to apply for, and what are the things that a person has to keep in mind? Like, you went to Cambridge. So how did you shortlist that I want to apply to Cambridge? And also, if you could tell us a little bit about what are the things that, people at Cambridge are looking for, and if you could tell us a little bit about your Cambridge journey.
Yeah, sure. That's a really good question, because it's a very difficult question. And I've been receiving question like this very often as well. But I do think that you need to firstly identify whether you want to work predominantly in India or in your home countries, or in some more competitive jurisdiction, I would say like Baker's legal markets, because for sure, like statistically speaking, New York or London are definitely those Baker's legal markets in this world. It's just on paper. So of course, India or Hong Kong, we also have really good legal market, but just statistically speaking, like the biggest, most profitable deals or transactions are definitely in those countries. If that is your goal, I do think that it's necessary for you to experience that Western style, or more like the culture of that legal market. Then, of course, going abroad, doing a master's degree in a different country will be helpful, because I could say, based on my experience in New York and London, they care more about the degrees obtained in their countries rather than any other countries. Even though when I say, for example, I am originally from Hong Kong, I did my bachelor's degree there, and our system is pretty much English law, to be honest, and we learn all the English cases. But still, if you want a graduate from Hong Kong to compete with a graduate in the UK, it's difficult for law firm to trust you rather than that particular person, because they trust their own legal system, the training arising from their own system. So how you can convince a law firm to trust you is to do a master's degree there. At least they will give you the benefit of doubt that you could be a good candidate and are capable of doing well as well, because you're doing well in their education system. So I think this is the starting point to choose your master's degree, is to decide whether you want to work abroad one day, at least in the foreseeable future. If you want, definitely choose something in the US or UK, which are usually some of the best law schools as well, or also Australia, Canada. That's also a good option, I think. And other than that, I think you also need to think about what kind of laws you want to do. For example, if you're into, say, competition law, then for example, UK, King's College, London is really good option. And also if you have this international law interest, then even Leiden University in the Netherlands or University in the US are also some very good options. So the area of law also kind of matter. Although that being said, the final category is if you're really interested in studying in a very top university like Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, Stanford, I think those are good options in the sense that because in my earlier life when I was in Hong Kong, I wasn't from the best law school in Hong Kong, to be very honest with you. And I think it's also true for many students. The majority of us are not usually from the the best law school of the country. And for me, I always had this problem of I need to prove myself to the employee that I was intelligent, I was efficient, I was a good candidate. But after I went to Cambridge, it's just how society works. People just perceive me as a more intelligent person, like outright, without me having to prove anything. I think it's just a problem with this society, but this is also the truth. So whether you want to like get the degree to help you with your career, to make you kind of effortlessly prove that you're a good candidate without having to prove anything. I think this is also the benefit I get from going to Cambridge. Is in the past I always have to prove myself, but right now I kind of have the benefit of doubt that I'm already a smart candidate, a good lawyer for my clients. So I think that's also the benefit. If you want to have, then definitely go for those top schools, but it's not necessary. It depends on your personal preference.
Thank you, Gordon. I think that's very true, because I think the name does matter. And that's what even clients look for. They want people to be from the top-notch law schools across the globe. But apart from what the perception of the society is, my question to you is, personally, what do you feel? Has it helped you drastically? Would it help securing a job in these jurisdictions? And, has it helped you personally to get a job? Do you think it's, possible to get a job easily if you are from Oxford, Cambridge, in UK or probably other jurisdictions, if you can give some references?
Yeah, sure. I would say, honestly, I can only tell from my experience in UK, Hong Kong, or even New York, potentially. But I would say that going to Cambridge helps me a lot, firstly, in London, because law firms in London, they look at international candidates. There are lots of thousands and thousands of candidates going to London for master's degree, right? How can they pick them? Honestly, their undergraduate degrees are quite similar. It's different countries. They don't know the system. They don't know the marking scheme. So what they can look at is the university you went to in the UK. And if it's Oxbridge, they can have the presumption that you're a good candidate already. Because I think the problem is that with Cambridge and Oxford, it's almost very difficult, if not impossible, for most people to get in, then they already do the screening for the employers already. So that's why they can trust that outright, because they have passed the rigorous screening of that particular university. So they don't need to do any more to justify that you're a good candidate. So I think that's also a common sense for them to pick those people rather than those who go to maybe a less reputable universities. So I think it's a sad thing, but it's just the truth. And I think it helps me, at least when I submitted an application in the UK, the first round of application, when I didn't know that much about the legal system, they would tend to progress my application to the next stage because of my brand. Of course, when you went to interviews, they would know whether you're good enough by listening to your answers, that kind of thing. At that point, Cambridge may not matter that much. But before that particular point, your education, I would say, helps you. At least you don't need to write a lot of time of application in order to get past just the application stage, but you can easily pass, or more easily pass, that stage, I think. And if I go back to Hong Kong, I would say my Cambridge name definitely helps me a lot, because I would say Hong Kong is also kind of a legal system that they pays more attention to those reputable universities. So many people in Hong Kong, actually, they study abroad and then go back to Hong Kong and then use that brand they got to get a job in our country. So I would say that in general, at least what I can see from the current legal market, a good master's degree from a top tier university does help to a certain extent, I would say.
Okay, thank you so much, Gordon. Some student has asked me a question. I've read it on the text box. They want to understand how to, if they are interested in applying for masters, what do you think are the key things they have to keep in mind? And what is it that Cambridge and Oxford universities like these are looking for? So how should, what kind of people can probably apply to Cambridge, Oxford? And what are the things that they have to keep in mind? If you can briefly give some pointers, like, the academic marks or co-curricular activities or work experience.
Yeah, sure. Well, actually, just a kind of a plug, because in my YouTube channel, last few days, I just uploaded a video about Cambridge application tips. You can also check that out, Gordon Chung on YouTube. But I will just quickly mention a few points. First of all, I don't think usually a first or like a first class honor is necessary. But I think it depends, because if you can prove that you're top 10 or 5% of the class, then that will be helpful for you to get into Cambridge. But I also heard of people who got a 2-1 or not excellent academic result, but they still got into Cambridge. For example, there are certain categories, like firstly, you may be already a practitioner. Sometimes people, they are practitioner, they go for a master's degree in Cambridge. Those people, they already have experiences, so that their grade doesn't matter that much anymore. And second of all, I would say depends on whether you have other extra achievements. For me, honestly, my academic achievement wasn't that good wasn't the best or top 1% of the class in any means. But the thing is, I published article as a law student in peer-reviewed law journals. That helped me a lot, because imagine all the applicants, they apply to Cambridge, Oxford. What kind of achievements they have? Work experiences, of course. But I could bet like less than 5 people actually have published anything in their undergraduate degree in an international journal. So for me, I stood out because of that. So you also, I think for you guys, you need to identify what kind of thing you need to do to kind of stand out from the crowd. Just do something creative and innovative. Publishing articles is my thing. You could also do that if you want to, but may not necessarily be your interest. So even some people, maybe they start a business, that kind of thing could also add something to their CV to kind of enhance their chance. Because at the end of the day, 𝐒𝐔𝐁𝐄, they look for a well-rounded candidates, having all the good elements in them, rather than just someone who is good at school. That's probably my answer, short answer for that. For more details, you can check out that video I have on YouTube.
Thank you, Gordon. We'll definitely subscribe and we'll see your videos there, but it will be very useful. My other question is that a lot of our law students are publishing content. You're right. I mean, it's very important to publish content, and they're writing regularly. Probably some of them are very active, but they are writing on these e-portals, the popular ones in India, which are being read by every lawyer or law students, having millions of viewers. But these are not peer-reviewed journals. So do you think that that would also count? Additionally, I would also like to understand that, you have a lot of publications in Europe and Asia in international journals. Like, how should these students go about it? How should they, what is the way to write, how to approach, and what is the right way to get published there?
Yeah, that's a good question. First of all, in response to the question about whether publishing in your internal journals or like online portals in India will help, that also comes to the first point I mentioned about whether the employers in a different country can like give too much weight to that particular journal. So because the thing is UK or US, you can say maybe they're more arrogant in some senses. They think their system is better. I would say it's not a general. It's just a general statement. But the thing is, they don't know how the journals work. They don't know how the Eastern system works. They don't know whether this journal is reputable in your country. They wouldn't do the research to see that. So the thing is, the problem will be only that they don't know how convincing it is that you have a good writing skills in the Western standard. I think that's the only problem you would encounter if you publish a lot. Although, of course, compared to a candidate who has never done any of those things, if you publish a lot of articles touching upon different kinds of subject areas you're interested in, then that will be helpful for your application, of course. But I would say ideally, if you can publish in a journals that is in a Western country, in Europe, in the UK, they will find it even more impressive because you're not from there, but you publish something there that would be so eye-opening for them. That's also what I did, because for me, I always realized that I want an international career. So the articles I publish, I have this technique is that it's always a comparative study between systems, so that I cover a little bit about my system, which I'm the one who knows that, and also cover a little bit about their system, so that I do a comparative analysis. That will help my article being able to publish in an academic journal more easily, because first of all, not too many people publishing comparative analysis like this. Second of all, it covers a topic that is relevant to their jurisdiction. They will more likely be able to admit that kinds of article. I think that's also the technique you can use when you consider your article. Don't choose a topic that is very narrow or very domestic in the sense that it only concerns Indian law, because you need to publish something that is internationally relevant in order for that to stand out from the crowd, and in order for the publisher or the journals to accept that particular articles. I think that's the tips I can give for those who want to publish.
That's actually true and very, very useful. There are two questions which I will just sum up. They are like simple questions if you could briefly answer. So the first question is that, in the law school, how they are supposed to decide which internship they should apply for, especially in the first few years, and whether they can consider, this is what I'm adding from my own, like it's my input, whether they should consider interning in international law firms, especially, given that now everything is virtual. It would be probably easier to get into good firms, getting an internship, how useful that can be in future to make an international career. And the other question is that how many research papers do you think should, an average, on your CV, how many research papers should you have by the end of your 5-year journey, so that, you look as if you are somebody who has actually done some decent work?
Yeah, sure. I would say for the first question, can you repeat it again, like quickly summarize it again? Because I wasn't sure.
I just want to know that, in the first few years of their law career, how are they supposed to choose their internships? Where should they intern? And whether they can consider foreign law firms for internships.
You mean like law firms in London, right?
Yeah, any other country, any other jurisdiction for that matter.
Okay. Yeah, for that question, I would say, based on my experience at least, I would say international law firms that are more likely to, I would say, at least include international students. In the past, they may have visa issues, but right now they have virtual open days, virtual networking events, and those are vital, I would say, in order to secure a job, especially in the US or UK. Because one thing they care a lot about is why you want to commit to this jurisdiction. Why do you want to come all the way here to work? You can't convince them if you never ever interact with anyone from the firm, or have never ever attended any event organized by the firm. So that's why you need to attend those events as many as possible, especially if you're a student, especially if you have one firm that you're really interested in, attend as many events from that particular firm, so that when you apply, they have work experience session, right? Just put the open day or even the networking event in the work experience session. Tell them who you met, what kind of conversation you have with the lawyer, what kind of knowledge you get from the firm that could not be otherwise obtained online or in their website. I think that's very important. That also makes you stand out from the crowd and makes you tailor your application to that particular law firm. And as for the second question, Sorry, the second question is about, just want to clarify.
How many research papers? How many research papers on an average?
Yeah. Okay. For that question, I would say, honestly, I don't think quantity matters that much. I would rather you have one paper published in an international journal rather than 6, 7 papers published in an online, I don't know, news online platform, or not like officially peer-reviewed journals, because usually peer-reviewed journal is more difficult in the sense that they will have reviewers looking at your papers anonymously, and it's a more well-established system. And also, if you have one paper published in a journal in UK or Europe, that will already be more than impressive from a foreigner's perspective, because you're not from there, and it takes time to publish even one articles in those journals, because it could be an article up to 10,000 or 15,000 words, which is 4 or 5 months of work potentially. So I think one could be enough. It depends on the quality.
Okay, perfect. Another question which has come is that without following the route of LLM, would it be possible to make a career in any foreign law firm or being a foreign lawyer and practicing in a different jurisdiction without having to go for an LLM and just after the LLB degree, with the Indian degree, whether it is possible?
First of all, I think in India, I actually heard that I even met a lawyer from India, and she literally secured a graduate scheme in a Silver Circle big law firms in London after just doing the LLB in India. I think she was recruited through a particular Indian placement scheme, that kind of thing. It's a fast scheme specifically for Indian students. I think that would be very good starting point for the student listening, because you should look for law firms who actually recruit particular Indian students to the London office. Because I knew one person, she did that, and she's obviously so intelligent, and obviously she has probably working so hard for that. But there's a possibility for you to directly, without doing any LLM degree, to just move from India to the UK for a trainee lawyer position, or at least earlier in their legal career. And other than that, I think if you're a qualified lawyer, there's also a possibility, but it also depends on the type of work you're doing. Say if you have always been doing commercial work, international work, that would be easier for you to make the jump to an international law firm. Probably will be coupled with the fact that you need to do the New York bar exam or the QLTS to transfer your qualification to a UK one or the New York one, so that at least you know the area of the law, so that the firm will be confident in taking you in. But other than that, the areas of law you have been practicing is also important. So you need to choose it wisely. If you know one day you want to work for an international law firm, choose arbitration, litigation, M&A, private equity, like project finance, all those things that are more like internationally relevant. I think that's a very good starting point as well. Even though you haven't done any LLM degree, at least you have experiences in those areas.
So what I understand is that even without LLM degree, if you have some experience in a relevant field, and especially these fields like mergers, transactional lawyers, arbitration lawyers, these are the good options for applying directly. But my question is, don't you think, Gordon, sponsoring of a visa and all may be a problem, getting a work visa? How do you think that hurdle can be crossed by people? Because I think a lot of jurisdictions are not open to accepting foreign lawyers because of this reason, especially in places like London.
Yeah, the good news is recently, I'm not sure any of you guys may be aware of the news, because in my year of applying, that was tough because my visa was going to expire after my master's degree. But right now, the UK has changed the immigration system starting from the 1st of December 2020. It's the fact that, for example, you come to the UK for a master's or bachelor's degree, you have 2 more extra years after the graduation to look for a job here. That is a game changer for many international students, first of all, because 2 years is a lot. I have 1 year to look for. Actually, my visa expired after 4 months, and then it took me 1 year to look for a job. If I was on that particular scheme they have introduced right now, I probably don't even need to reapply for visa, and I could just stay, and then it will be much easier for me to do that. So for you guys, it's much easier in this sense. Other than that, for sponsoring a work visa, it's also easier now after the change to the immigration system, at least in London, in the UK, because they don't need to do a resident labor market test. Basically, in the past, they need to prove that they couldn't recruit any domestic candidates, so that they need to use foreign candidates. But right now, they don't need to do this test anymore. so that it helps them to pass that particular threshold to recruit foreigners much easier. So that I think law firms nowadays, with Brexit and everything, they're more likely to recruit actually foreign candidates or international candidates. They are treated equal as other EU candidates. So I think that's the good news for all the future aspiring lawyers in India who want to work for UK. I think at least that's a good option, or like a more easier option for them compared to the past.
But in your opinion, could you tell us names of certain law firms which are open to accepting foreign lawyers, which are known? Because, firms like 3 Crowns LLP, for instance, has been founded by a foreign lawyer, Jan Paulsen. So, there may be firms which are very open and liberal about taking foreign lawyers from these jurisdictions from Asia. So could you name a couple of them so that it's easier for our students and viewers to apply, and send applications in those firms?
Yeah, actually, you guys should check out, I type it in the chat box as well, 𝐒𝐔𝐁𝐄, because we have, usually it's a website in the UK about legal market. You can often have a look at all the firms there. Usually, because you know about the visa requirement, only firms usually pay more than at least £30,000 per year could sponsor trainees anyway. So when you look at law firms in London, actually you need to look for firms that are as good as possible, as prestigious as possible. Those firms are the firms that will definitely take more international candidates because they are able to do that. They are large enough. For example, Magic Circle firms, they could recruit up to 100 trainees each year. They have the ability to have more diversity. Linklaters, Freshfields, like Allen Overy, Slaughter and May. Silver Circle firms like Ushers, Brian Cave, Leighton Paisner, and also Herbert Smith, Freehills. Actually, yeah, Herbert Smith, they also recruit a decent amount of Indian candidates as well, based on what I heard. Latham Watkins, Baker McKenzie, those more like US law firms, but have a bigger presence in London. Those firms, they would take a lot of candidates from India. Even in my current cohort, we have 17 people now. And there's also one Indian student, one Australian student, one Malaysian student. I'm from Hong Kong, and there are also students from Singapore. So it's just very diverse intake of trainees. So I think for many of you guys, you would love to work in a more diverse environment like that rather than an environment with only British people. That's probably not the best option. So I think those firms you need to pay an eye on. And just check out that website and look for all the firms listed there. Usually, if they pay a salary over than 35 or 40, they will be able to sponsor candidates for sure. Just apply to those firms and give it a shot anyway.
Excellent. And also, could you tell us about these solicitor exams? I mean, how important it is and how useful would it be? Would you recommend somebody to prepare for these exams? Because I was having a discussion with a QC recently who told me that, being a solicitor and qualifying these exams may be the best thing to do to get into these firms because they prefer solicitors. And also, if you could tell us a little bit about your New York bar exam, how was it and how easy it is to prepare for it? And if somebody wants to do it, how they can go ahead?
Yeah, sure. First of all, about the UK bar exam or UK exam, it's also a bit uncertain right now because they have the SQE being introduced. If some of you guys have ever heard of that, but I would say originally without the SQE, because right now it's still the possible route. Like even for qualified lawyers or barrister back in other countries who has never done anything like that, that's why they would do a master's degree first, because when they do the master's degree first, they come to the law firm, they apply for training contract, say. Although it sounds weird if you're already a qualified lawyer to still apply for training contract, but there's a good thing about that is that if they accept you for the training contract, like in my case, you need to study some of the GDL, like a conversion clause, and also a accelerated legal practice course, what I'm doing right now. The law firm will be sponsoring everything from the course fees and give you a maintenance grant of up to $8,000 or $10,000 for a period of 7-8 months to live in London. So at least you kind of have all these things figured out if you just apply for the training contract, because they will cover everything literally, and they will sponsor your visa, have catch-up social meetings with you from time to time. So that's why it's a easier route. But if you want to do the QLTS or the SQE potentially in the future, some firms are open to recruiting qualified lawyers from other countries. But I do believe that the threshold will be higher because they need to recruit directly from other jurisdictions who may not necessarily have the experiences they want. So I do believe that you need to have very convincing experiences or reasons for them to actually hire you. That will be a difficult part. And I would say the vacancies may not be as like numerous compared to training contract application, where they have a fixed number of people they want to recruit. And even with pandemic, they wouldn't revoke your offer because of the bad economic situation. Because usually for big law firms like that, they already have a set number of trainees they want to recruit every year. They will need them in the future as well, so that there's more stability as well in that sense, because they wouldn't try to they will have partners who bear the loss rather than trainees who bear the loss, so that it would actually don't affect junior lawyers like me that much, the pandemic, in terms of my career progression. I can still start my job as normal. So I think it's very important for you to realize which kind of path you want to take, because the QLTS path is good for you to qualify as a UK lawyer, but it doesn't help you very quickly get into a big law firm, because getting a qualification and getting a job is different. Because training contract, they will train you, but for the QLTS or qualified position, they're not going to train you. They expect you to be good already the time you enter into the firm. So there's a difference. And for the New York bar exam, just very quickly, I would say, first of all, you need to know whether you're eligible, because sometimes for a student coming from a common law countries, or studying common law for 3 years or above, they will be eligible. So usually that's not a problem for common law country students. If you're eligible, pick your course providers. You need to know what kind of materials you're going to use. I was lucky enough that I have a friend who took the bar exam, and he used some materials, and then I kind of used his material, and then I self-study myself for 4 months, which I think is more than enough for bar exam studying, if you study full-time, of course. And I flew to New York to take the bar. I think right now they do online examinations, but from my experiences, it was more like the repetition and intense studying method you use. And if you're doing well in exams in general, I don't think you will have a big problem with the bar exam with enough preparation. So I think that's why it's a good thing to take the New York bar, because everyone can do it if you are from a common law country, basically. If you're from a civil law country, you may have to do an LLM in America. But if not, you can easily get a qualification first, which is also a good thing if you want that qualification or to be a plus in your CV. And if you have the time and effort to do so, of course.
Okay, and students are asking if these international moot courts will help them in any way in getting jobs or probably, making a name for themselves.
I think you need to know whether you want to be a barrister and solicitor. For example, if you want to be a solicitor, I wouldn't say moot court experience itself will help a lot in like getting a job. But there's the caveat for that is, for me, I did moot court as well. I did the Manfred Last Space Mooting Competition, which was a great experience for me. And more interestingly, because of that experience, I was interested in outer space law, right? Outer space legislation. And I actually wrote 2 book chapters on the outer space law. And that actually helped me for my training contract application, because it was a special achievement for me. And I wouldn't have done that without the mooting experience, because moot court prepare you with legal research and writing skills, right? If you apply the skills to do something different in your academic career, then it will be a point for you to stand out. I think it's more like you need to be smart about the way you do things, about the experience you have, and kind of take advantage of that rather than the experience itself, because everyone does moot court. Let's be real, like even law students, like many of them does moot court, but whether you can convert into a benefit, it depends on you.
Okay, but that brings me to a very interesting question. See, I have too many questions myself, and students have been bombarding us with questions, but I ask you the question that may be relevant for everybody. I saw that draft of your covering letter which you had prepared, for the future trainee contract application. Would you please guide us a little bit of how, it was so intense and it was so detailed. You knew everything about the law firm. So I was very surprised you knew about their offices, you knew what place, how they are doing in what field. So could you tell us a little bit how we should apply before applying, rather than just simply sending a template to all? How specific should our research be before we apply to a particular firm? What are the things we should keep in mind while drafting our application for a job or for an internship? And what is it that they want to see and they will entertain? Because most of the applications just are ignored.
Yeah, sure. Well, actually, first of all, I need to clarify that you need to identify the websites you can do the research, because that's the starting point, right? If you don't know anything or what resources. So I will just quickly type something. Legal 500, first of all, this is the one for checking the ranking of each and every law firm in UK. Actually, not even in UK only. Europe, Middle East, America, they have all the ranking, I think. And another one, Chamber Students. This is for law firms in the UK. It's also about ranking. Those two websites are mainly for the ranking the law firm have in terms of their practice area strengths. You need to do that as your starting point. Identify which firm is good at which area, so that you can kind of, filter out the firms you don't like or you like, right? And another one is Chamber Associate. This one is for law firms. Chamber Associate is for law firms in the US. It's the ranking of the US law firm in New York, for example. So this is also for an option if someone who want to pursue a career in America in the future. After that, you also want to look at, as I already mentioned before, 𝐒𝐔𝐁𝐄. This website is very interesting. They list out all the ranking made by the employees, an anonymous survey by the employees of that particular firm. So it's an accurate reflection of the culture of the firm, like the work-life balance, the kind of salary they have. They have an A to D, I think the ranking between A to D, so that you can look at the firm and know each law firm's particular ranking in that particular social aspect of it. Other than that, the second important thing is, that's why I say it's important to go to open days or networking events, because after you go into that event, when you write that down in your cover letter, you can name drop that particular person you met in the open day. For example, after attending the open day on the 10th of December, I spoke to this lawyer, I don't know, Dave, associate or something like that. And then he told me that the firm, for example, has a specific training methods, has a specific training program. It's just, you need to get that information from the lawyers you met and then put it in your cover letter to showcase that you actually met someone there. Then you will be able to tailor that particular application. So I think these two things are the starting points for you if you have no idea how to even start with your cover letter, so that you have the basics. But further down the line, I also mentioned things like the law firm strategies, like Swiss variety model. Those are more like the business, very deep concepts about the commercial law firm. Those things, I would say, are not necessary, but if you know that, that would be great. But I think the first two things are the thing you need to know first. And the third point about the law firm strategies, you need to do that through further research on the firm or the website to know about that.
Thank you very much, Gordon. This is excellent. And a lot of students are asking the names of the website. What I have understood is 𝐒𝐔𝐁𝐄. The other one is Chambers and Associates. And the third one is
Students, Legal 500.
Legal 500. Who's who legal? So I think somebody has mentioned, Hitarth has rightly mentioned for all of you.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Hitarth. That's very useful.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
I think now students are going to spend a lot of time on this rather than Instagram and Facebook. They're going to read a little bit more, and especially 𝐒𝐿𝐿𝐿, where people are giving honest reviews, because there you will get to know what the employees feel working there. Because, the grass is always greener on the other side. And maybe once you see the ranking, the salary, and how lucrative it is. But Gordon, the candid question for you. Like, how do you feel working in your own jurisdiction? Because I'm sure you may have some experience, and working in a foreign jurisdiction like London, though it is the capital of the world. But how do you think, how easy it is or how difficult it is for a person from a different jurisdiction in terms of acceptance, culture, a salary, lifestyle, these practical issues which nobody will ever discuss with me?
First of all, salary-wise, to be very honest, many people say you go to London because of salary, right? That was like completely false, because back in Hong Kong, and anyone knows, like, Hong Kong is a very good city in terms of like income as well. Honestly, in London, if I say I work for Baker McKenzie Hong Kong, I actually would have earned way more money, because the taxation is like 17% maximum in Hong Kong. In London, the taxation is like 40% if you become an associate, because if you become an associate, usually at a big law firm, you got £100,000 a year. Like UK, London law firm, if you're a first year associate, after 2 years of training, like potentially you can get that amount, but 40% tax is a lot. Maybe you end up have £6,000 per month, which is not bad. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a good salary for in any standard for sure. In London, you will be more than enough to live a comfortable life. But it's just the fact that salary is not my main consideration, because if I'm just chasing for that, I'll probably work back in Hong Kong, because it's just easier, and I I would rather live with my family. I don't need to pay rent as well. So I save like £1,000 already. So I think you need to realize that the focus is about the training rather than the salary, because salary could be temporary for now, but the kind of training you get and then you go to another place or you get another opportunity, that will lead you to something even more and more satisfactory as well in your academic or like legal career. So you need to think about the long-term benefit rather than short-term benefit. That was my consideration, at least. And about the culture, I would say, of course, if I work in Hong Kong, just like if you work in India, everyone are like, I kind of just like you, like, you know, so it's easy for you to be there because it's comfortable to be with people that are just similar to you. I think that's just normal common sense. So that, of course, there will be a sense of comfort there, but also there will be a lack of excitement at the same time. Because if I work in London, it's always good to kind of interact with people from a completely different culture. Now, for example, I kind of can know what British people are generally behaving so that I kind of know how to deal with them in general. At the same time, at a big law firm, you always need to deal with different kinds of people from Latin America, from India, from Asia, from other parts of Asia, from Europe. So it's very interesting atmosphere to be with if you enjoy that level of interaction with different kinds of people. I personally find, especially in London, there are not too many legal markets in this world that values diversity and inclusion. London, they literally have so many webinars, open days, law firm events where they provide lots of food just for diversity and inclusion. It's crazy how much the firm has invested in those particular fields that I could never see in Asia, for example, encouraging diversity and inclusion in the legal field, at least, not at the time when I were there. So I think there's an important consideration to see how much the people care about diversity. And that's why I can experience that even more in London. I think that's a very important point. Well, when it comes to things like maybe racism or like discrimination, do you think it's possible? I would say, I think at an environment like law firm, global law firm, they have been so used to dealing with different clients from different backgrounds, different associates from different backgrounds. I don't think it really matters that much in the workplace environment. Honestly, although to be fair, like there's always this argument that whether you can get to the top hierarchy of a particular firm, that may have a little bit to do with that. But that's a long story unless you want to commit your entire career here, which no one ever knows anyway. I think it's something that it's not an immediate concern for most of us, at least sitting here, because I would say at the end of the day, when you look at the training structure, literally yesterday, they sent me, like, for example, this seat allocation, because for any trainee, you need to pick 4 seats, right? They just have this structural training program that you feel very safe to undertake so that you will be able to be a good lawyer after that rigorous training structure. I think, and they have many options for you. For example, I probably will choose fields like M&A, private equity, dispute, EU competition, and antitrust. Those things are insanely international. So that for me, it's like after training at those particular departments, my career will be immediately internationalized because those areas are relevant in any jurisdiction, M&A, that kind of thing. It's just so insanely useful for my future career. So I think those are the considerations you have if you really want to pick an international career.
That's correct. I think especially that's why I encourage students to prefer those kind of subjects. Essentially, if they are looking for an international exposure, like subjects like arbitration. And I'm very happy that students of Lloyd are very passionate about arbitration. They keep writing day and night, and the kind of learning they are getting. So it's commendable. But Gordon, like asking you, do you think the kind of work that you are doing there, like you said about people being very acceptable, and it's a mixed, diverse culture. But so far as your learning experience back in Hong Kong, and do you think now what you are learning in London, it's very different? The quality is very different because Hong Kong itself is an excellent place for a lot of people to land and to work. Like for a lot of Indians, I'm sure it is a dream destination to work in Singapore and Hong Kong. So do you see a lot of difference in your the working style and the quality? Do you see any change in you as a professional?
Honestly, if I really put it in specific things like work hours, maybe that's a big thing in Asia and in Europe. Let's be honest, because in Asia, I bet in India as well, if you work in an M&A deal in a Hong Kong global law firm, it's easily for you to work till, I don't know, 4 a.m. That's not impossible. To be honest, But in London, I would say they still have very intense working, but maybe that hours would be like 1 a.m., 12 a.m., 12 a.m. maximum. I would say, especially right now we work from home, I would say it's like there's a difference, like in this particular work-life balance sense, which I also gravitate towards more because back in Asia, I was just always in this competitive atmosphere. It was a bit tiring for you to keep that atmosphere even when you start working as a lawyer. But in London, I would say the fact that they care more about mental well-being of employees, which is a Western thing and Western concept. At least they promote this concept more rigorously compared to the AEs. So I think that definitely helps me in terms of to strike a better balance, even though it's still an intense work hours, don't get me wrong, because lawyer is an intense occupation. That's, you know, it's true for any jurisdiction, any country, especially if you work in the corporate field. But still, it's the lesser evil, and you can still enjoy a bit more of that, more, you know, comfortable. Because I'm not sure how many of you have ever been to like London, for example, or have lived here. In Hong Kong, I was just feel like people always are in this intense state of stress. They're so stressful all the time about work, about life. But in the West, they always have this attitude of just taking it slow, like appreciate the moments. That's a good balance to have. If you are regionally from the East, you always have that competitive atmosphere. But when you're in the West, you also kind of learn about the more like chill or take it easy atmosphere, which make my life more balanced than when I was in the East. I would say this is probably one of the best things I have in London in terms of that social life or work-life balance aspect.
Okay, so I have last two questions for you, and then I'll ask the director, sir, to choose one or two students whom we want to ask any question, because many students will be upset after the session as I didn't let them speak. So,
no, don't worry. I mean, just you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn or Instagram, Gordon Chung. Probably I will respond through Instagram more easily because
that's what I'm telling students, that even if your questions are not answered here, you can perhaps reach out to him on LinkedIn. And somebody was complaining that I've been following Mr. Gordon Chung and I didn't get a response. But if you write Lloyd's reference, I'm sure he will respond this time. So you don't have to worry. I'm sure he's very approachable. He responded me immediately. Perhaps he may have missed it. So you can probably reach out to him. Now, the last two questions, Gordon, from my end. One is that, see, London is very competitive. I know that everybody wants to be in London. But what other jurisdictions would you recommend to our students? Should they consider for, you know, pursuing a legal career? Like you mentioned about Australia, you mentioned about US. What are the other places which are unexplored? Like, for instance, a friend of mine told me Germany can be an excellent option, you know, because there's not much competition and, you know, they pay very well. Lawyers are, you know, like it's a very good career option there for foreign lawyers, especially. So for Asians, which other countries, for Indians especially, if you have any idea, if you could tell us.
Yeah, honestly, I think it also depends on where do you want to live. Because for me, my main consideration is always I would love to live in a big cosmopolitan city. So that's why my options are always centered across Hong Kong, New York, London, even Singapore maybe, and Australia potentially. I would say those countries are just very classically international and global. And I love living in a big city. So that's why I enjoy those environments. But I would say career progression wise, I would say countries like Australia or even some New Zealand, because those options are good in the sense that when I look at UK law firms here, when they recruit qualified lawyers from other countries, they usually prefer Australian lawyer or Kiwi lawyer, what do we say, a lawyer from New Zealand, or even maybe Canadian lawyers or American lawyers. It's just that the fact that you have that experience in those leading common law jurisdictions, it will help you massively, even though in the future you want to transfer to a different career path. So I think career-wise, if you always know that you want to work at a leading jurisdiction, those countries are a good option to start your legal career or to have some experience there, because that will help you in your future career if you want to move to other countries or to have more flexibility due to the legal system or due to the well-established cases there. So I think those are probably the things you want to think about. And in Asia Pacifically, of course, Singapore and Hong Kong, I think they're definitely the best options. And Singapore also a really good option, especially those countries also have a good arbitration practice. They have the arbitration center, which is also good for international disputes. And they always rank the first top 5 or 6, internationally in terms of international arbitration. So I think those will be good options for Indian students as well.
Okay, this brings me to my last question, Gordon. I know you must be really tired of answering my question, but this one is important. So you were mentioning about some virtual meets which are happening nowadays to include other people also. And nowadays, you said there are good opportunities to connect to lawyers. So what are those opportunities, if you can mention a little bit about it, and also how our students can use LinkedIn as a effective tool for networking and connecting to good people? Because you are one of the finest people to tell us that, since you are connected to more than 20,000 lawyers across the globe. So how can they also
Yeah.
follow that same path?
Yes, thank you for that. And I mean, I'm still learning the process, but for me, based on my experiences, I would say definitely used LinkedIn to reach out to lawyers or law firms that you want to apply to. I think the good starting point, first of all, is to join the events you see on LinkedIn so that you build that first connection. Because it would be a bit weird, to be honest, if you're just, for example, from a different country out of blue and then message a recruiter, oh, I'm from this country and I want to know more about your recruitment process. That would sound a bit, you put off the maybe British or those people a little bit, because it's just a bit too aggressive, because you have never joined the events first. But however, if you say, I just joined the events at that particular date, and then I'm very interested in more opportunity, then that will be a smoother opening line for your message. And the recruiter will be more likely to reply you, because let's be real, for example, recruiter, if someone is a recruiter, he's probably receiving way more messengers than I have. But I have also received a lot of messages that I could understand it's so difficult to reply to each and every one of them. So I can imagine it's impossible for them to reply to someone who is even not in the UK and who has never joined any event at that particular law firm. So you need to consider that possibility. It's not that they're rude. It's impossible for them to reply to you, especially there's so many people asking questions. You need to realize that. So you don't need to be pushy, but you need to be very quick and concise as to what you want to say actually in the message. So don't put a very long message about your whole early journey of your life. They don't have the time for that, because learning is a fast-paced road. They would need to know the key point. That's also the skill of a lawyer. You can't just like keep saying random stuff for a long time and then just come at last you talk about the thing you actually want to talk about. It's just not how it works. So I think that's the technique you need to know about. Tailor that message to that person after joining a particular event, so that you can make that connection and that person actually notice you. I think that's a very important point. And also nowadays, use Instagram, follow those law firms in Instagram. They do a lot of stories on Instagram, and you can actually get their attention if you always follow the event, even on a platform like Instagram, Facebook. That will be very helpful as well. Don't just focus on LinkedIn. There are many more platforms law firm has been investing in.
Excellent. I think there are other questions, but I don't think the time will permit us to take those questions. But I'll ask Director Sir to shortlist 2 or 3 questions from the chat box. And some students perhaps can directly ask you questions, because I would not want to do that. So last few questions. And then...
Thank you so much, Tarak sir. I would suggest the students to take up questions directly, because by that they would be in a better. Ishika, kindly ask your question. Yes.
Good morning, sir. This is 𝐒𝐿𝐵𝐷𝐈𝐁𝐄. My question to you is, during your law school education life, what were the golden experiences you had, and how we as beginners learn from it?
Yeah, sure. From my law school, I would say I always try to take the bosses, because I do have some goals or some activities I really want to participate, because I feel like that will help me with my career. First of all, publication, as I mentioned, that was definitely the thing, because I always feel like it's cool that if I could publish something somewhere when I was a student, because it's just so uncommon. And I felt like that's a good learning process, because you know how to write, you know how to research, which are all the essential skills of a lawyer. Mooting competition, I recommend as well, and I personally did it. It was such a joyful experiences, and I traveled to Australia to do the mooting competition, and it was such a experience. And also the first time I came across international law, which I think is also good to be exposed to a completely different regime or legal system. And other than that, I would also recommend you to be a research assistant. For me, my approach was literally that some professor, they may need researcher for their dissertation, or not dissertation, like the research paper. Volunteer to be a research assistant, so that when you apply for a master's degree, you always need one reference lecturer, right? That professor can help you certify that you have good research skills and certify that you're interested in that particular area of law. I did a research on corporate governance when I was in my undergraduate degree. It helped me with my application for the corporate law master's degree in Cambridge. And lastly, I was saying, if your school have a law review, because then that would be good for you to participate. Because when I was Cambridge, I was also one of the editor of the Cambridge Law Review. And that was a good experience because you have a chance to look at different articles published by different professors and kind of edit them, and also have a look at the different hot topics in the legal field. So I think for me, I would say just be open to as many different opportunities as possible, because if you work as a research assistant, it doesn't mean you need to be a professor anytime sooner. It's just an experience, and that experience may lead to something more in the future career path, or help you decide what you don't want to do or what you want to do in the future. Thank you for your question.
Mr. Gordon, there is a question by two students, but that can be combined into one. It is about, one person is asking, is it possible for a lawyer from common law country to move and practice in civil law country? And the similar is Canada a good jurisdiction for future practice? Both can be answered together.
Yeah, sure. I would say if you're from a common law countries, if you want to practice in the civil law country, firstly, it depends on the jurisdiction, because some jurisdiction, they have their own bar exam you need to pass. That could be a problem. And also, it also depends on whether you apply for the global law firms in that particular jurisdiction. Say, first of all, if you don't know the language, it may be difficult for you in the first place to apply for a legal position there. And other than that, if you're applying for an international organization or businesses in a civil law country, they need to take some international lawyers or attorneys, because they may have businesses in other countries as well. So it's more likely for you to actually get into those big organizations or companies in a civil law jurisdiction, because they need international expertise. That would be a good starting point for you as well, I think. And other than that, as for Canada, I think that's definitely a good option, because I know a lot of people going to Canada, even though they originally study in the UK. It's also about the atmosphere and the environment in Canada. And I do recommend you to check out also an organization called Global Lawyers of Canada. It's a partner organization with Global Lawyers Connect, and they actually have a lot of expertise on this particular subject about qualifying in Canada. And I probably think it's best for you to reach out to them.
Any other question? Good. Along with the work experience, what are the roles of application, essays, statement of purpose, and academic references while applying for top-notch universities? There's a question.
Yeah, I'm looking at that as well. Thank you. Yeah, I think, as I mentioned, I actually make the YouTube video on my Cambridge application tips. I actually explain even more fully there, but I would say in general, when it comes to academic reference, they're really important. For example, if you're applying for a corporate law degree like me, I applied for a corporate law degree in Cambridge. The professor who gave me the references are first of all, my contract law professor. She marked my exam. I work as a research assistant for her, and she's from Stanford as well. And it's like her qualification and her research interests help me a lot in certify that I'm a good candidate for the program, because I study company law from her. So it's just, you need to choose someone who's actually, whose area of research interest is similar to the degree you're applying to. And my second professor that helped me write my reference letter is my dissertation advisor, supervisor. And he kind of see through the process of me publishing my articles on contract law. So he was also a good person to certify that I'm interested in the commercial atmosphere and the commercial law area. So I think you need to pick it very wisely, what kind of professors or who you want to turn to in order to write your write your personal statement, write your reference letter. And for your personal statement, I would say it's important for you to highlight why you're interested in that particular of law. It must be based on all of your past experiences. It could be work experiences, working in commercial field, or even your academic interests, maybe the kind of course you pick when you were at undergraduate law degree. Those could be very good evidence to show that you are interested in that particular course you're applying to. I think you kind of need to tell a story when you write your personal statement so that you can convince the school that this is why you apply to their law school, their program. It's not just a random application. It's something you carefully consider about. You can only do that by including as many evidence as possible. So sit down and think about your past experiences will be a good starting point for your application.
There is a question by one student. How to get letter of recommendations from reputed law firms, as Rhodes Scholarship required minimum 6 letters of recommendation this year. So what should we do as a law student for Rhodes Scholarship?
For me, I personally didn't apply for that, but I heard that it was such a prestigious, difficult scholarship to apply to. But I do think that if you want to get recommendation letter from a reputable law firms, first of all, you need to really get a work experience there, because if you have never worked with them, it's almost impossible to do that. So I do think that you probably need to start with the firms that you want to get a recommendation letter from. And sometimes I don't even feel like the firms is necessarily the most important thing, like their brand or their reputation, because when you give a recommendation letter, it's also important that they actually know you as a person. They can certify you are a hardworking, diligent, intelligent person. But that can only be based on a long period of time you guys spending together in order to get to know each other. So I mean, the relationship between you and the one who gives you the reference letter is also important. So don't ignore the fact that sometimes you don't necessarily to have all 6 people being in the high position in a law firm. It's not necessary. You rather choose someone who is intimate and close to you as a person, as a mentor. So I think that's something you want to pay attention to. Hope this answers the questions.
Can someone practice in the International Court of Arbitration? There is a question.
Yeah, I mean, this is always difficult to say, because many people always say they want to work for like International Court of Justice, like things like that, international organization. I think usually in that case, it requires some time of practicing in your own jurisdictions first, because no one is gonna just work directly at an arbitration court or as a lawyer or as a lawyer in International Court of Justice without ever practicing. Usually they require a candidate to have substantial work experience already. And then they usually recruit those lawyers laterally from other firms, or from, a more I don't think they will recruit from fresh graduates. So I think you probably need to find a niche area you want to practice, and then practice in that area for a certain period of time. Then you can make the jump to those big organization or international organization.
There are many questions by many students. Questions are coming.
Yeah, I mean, if for those who want to really ask me a question, reach out to me on LinkedIn, or even I would just send my link to my Instagram. I can actually...
That would be better. I would
Instagram,
write on LinkedIn and wait for the answers to come from him. And you can also write, while you write the questions, you can write down that I'm someone who have heard you in the session which you have taken in your college.
Yeah, and also Instagram is good because there are less messages on Instagram, so that I will more easily respond to your messages there first, because LinkedIn, sometimes there's so many messages like back 2 weeks ago. So, it's more difficult to reply to those as well. So just let me know if you have some more specific question.
Very good.
Yeah, don't forget to give reference of Lloyd, because he'll recall that,
Yeah.
Otherwise
that's true.
He'll get confused with other law students.
Yeah. That's also a tip for reaching out to people. That's what I mentioned. You need to attend the events you were with, the speaker, so that they know the connection.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Gordon. I'm very, very happy that you took out time, and especially on a Friday. We're very, very grateful, and I think it was a very fruitful session, very important discussion. Salim sir, would you like to say some concluding remarks?
Thank you so much, Mr. Gordon. Thank you so much, Tariq sir. Thank you so much, Ms. Mansi. Thank you so much, all the students who have joined today for such an impressive, such an important session. And we are all thankful to Mr. Gordon for taking out time, for accepting our request, joining us and sharing his experience and guiding our students over towards the international career in terms of education, in terms of profession, in terms of practice also. This is a really, really very useful session. And at the same time when we are teaching them law, at the same time when they are learning the law, they should be also guided equally on all the important career prospects and perspectives which are really important for them, which are exactly for which they are actually over here in the law school. So thank you so much for guiding our students today and giving your time, early morning time from England. Thank you, Tarak sir. Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Thank you all.
Thank you
thank
very
you so
much.
much for thank you for asking me as well. And yeah, if you have any questions, just reach out to me on LinkedIn or Instagram, or subscribe to my YouTube channel because I provide more detailed tips there as well. And it's been a pleasure for me speaking here. It's also my first ever event with like a university at India. So I think it was an amazing experience, and thanks for having me.
Very well.
Hope to
Thank
collaborate
you.
with you in future also, and we'll have you again.
Yes, we will continuously invite you to future sessions.
Yeah, more than happy. When I start my training contract in a few months, I probably can share my experience actually working, in a firm. But yeah.
Surely.
Thank you.
Thank
Everyone.
you. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you, Tarak sir, for all the support. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us today.